Welcome to another episode of Cyber Secrets. In this episode, we're going to be talking about exploitation on a budget using the Metasploit framework and Armitage. Armitage is a graphic user interface for Metasploit and makes things a little bit easier. You're also going to need a vulnerable system to be able to play with. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to want to do is start two different applications. I have a VMware called Metasploitable and a 2003 VMware. The next thing I'm going to do is open up Armitage. The plan is I'm going to start Armitage. Armitage is then going to start Metasploit. Once Metasploit's up and running, I'm going to attack the 2003 server. Then I'm going to attack from that 2003 server using it as a jump point, attack the Metasploitable system, which is a Linux box. It's Ubuntu 8.0, and it does have several pieces of software that are vulnerable. But like anything, unfortunately it does take time. Okay, now that Armitage has started up, we'll go ahead and make it a little bit smaller. The first thing we're going to need to know is the address of the 2003 server. So go into the system here, and we'll go into command prompt, and just type in IP config. The specific IP address that we're going to attack is 192.168.0.56. Now that we have that address, go ahead and clear the database because this is a very first type of attack. And what's really nice about Armitage is it's a graphic user interface for Metasploit. This makes it simple stupid for anybody that does not have any experience with Metasploit, but it also has the MSF or the interface for those that have a lot of experience with Metasploit. If you look at the numbers, it has well over 1,100 exploits and over 300 payloads. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to host, add a host, and then add 192.168.0.56. Once it's added, it'll pop up here in the screen on the top right hand side of Armitage. Then what we're going to want to do is just do a simple right click, then left click on scan. This does take time. It is going to take or use Nmap as its scanning utility in the back end and basically does a simple scan. This is only going to scan the first few thousand ports that it's open or that it has in its database. But keep in mind, TCP and UDP, they both have 65,536 ports. This is only going to scan a couple thousand of those 65,536 times 2 ports. Once it's done, we're going to want to look for specific vulnerabilities. See, it's already doing a little bit of banner grabbing. It does show that it's Windows 2003 with no service pack. That's good information to know. And what's also nice is that if you mouse over it, it usually gives you the information. Microsoft Windows 2003 Service Pack 0. So let's just do a simple, go left click on attacks, and then find attacks. It's going to scan its database for possible attacks for that Windows 2003 system. Do note that it's finding possible attacks. These are not all the attacks that will work on it, but it's possible attacks that may work on that system. So when you right-click on it and see all the types of attacks there are, we're going to choose a very specific one. This one is going to be the SMB, and the Windows 2003 will try the Net API. What's nice about this is it has localhost, which is the host of the system that I'm currently using, and the target. lhost, lport, again, local. Our host, our port, that's going to be remote, or the target address. Let's do a simple launch and see if it's vulnerable. At this point, it's actually trying to attack the system. If it's not vulnerable, it'll come back and actually tell us. If it is, it'll come back with a shell. Because this is taking a while, I'm making the assumption it's probably not vulnerable. So I'll right-click, look at the attacks, and then just start scanning through some others. This one does look promising for that specific operating system. Again, Windows 2003, no service pack. There was an RPC decom buffer overflow for it. So let's try this one as well. Again, remember, lhost, localhost. Our host is the target remote host. It's going to launch, sending exploit, setting up the environment. And as you see immediately, the icon up at the very top, it went from a basic computer, now it looks like it's red with lightning on it. That means the system has been exploited. So cool things you can do is right-click on it, and then Metaterpreter. Metaterpreter means that that's the payload that it pushed over to the other system. So we're going to go ahead and left-click on pivoting. What's really cool about pivoting is it'll look at other systems on that network. For example, as you see, there's a 192.168.159 network that we cannot get access to at this specific point. So it hit up Setup. Once it's set up, we can now use that system as an island hop or as a pivot point. So right-click, go back to Metaterpreter, and now we're going to try an ARP scan to see if there's anybody else on that 192.168.159 network. It's running in the background. Found a 192.168.159.1 and a .2. That's going to be your VMware systems. 192.168.159.129 and 136, they look of interest. So what we're going to do is right-click and then scan. Then on this one, right-click and then scan. We already know that the 192.168.159.129 is the Windows 2003 system, but we're scanning it just in case. The 136 is probably going to be our Linux box. So we just need to wait till the scan is complete, and then we'll find out what happens after that. So as you see the icon that just popped up, the 192.168.159.136 is in fact a Linux box. It's a Linux Debian distribution. And going back to the 129 address, it's that same Windows 2000 system. So what we can do, or what has happened, we've compromised 192.168.0.56 and used that as a pivot point to see internally into another network. Now what we can do is single left click on that 136 address, left click on attack, and then left click on find attacks. Of course it says happy hunting. We right click, go to attacks, and now we see all kinds of attacks right here. For example, let's try the user map script. Localhost, our host, and now launch. We're going to try reverse connection because we're going through a NAT. So it looks like a command shell is opened, and as you see, it's now highlighted in red with lightning bolts across it. So just as a recap, with Armitage, which is using Metasploit as a backend, we compromised this 192.168.0.56, and then a secondary network that it was connected to, 192.168.159 network, it had a system with the 136 address that we're also able to compromise. Now what can you do with this? We've attacked a Windows box and a Linux box. On the Windows box, we'll go to Metaterpreter, well, just to explore. let's do screenshot. Once it does a screenshot, it actually takes the information from the other system, which is this computer right here, and allows you to see it on your screen. Let's also right-click on it. That interpreter, you can interact, you can even do VNC if you wanted to take over access to their desktop. You can show running processes. What's even nicer about it is in the post modules, you can even do things such as grab hash files, get their username and passwords, things in that area. On the Linux box, you do have a different set of things to attack. So we're going to go to shell, we can interact. In the post modules, what you can end up doing is, again, grab hashes out of the /etc/shadow file, or you can interact, so it gives you kind of like a command line type interface. So go and left click on interact, and at this point, you see at the bottom, you see a $. Let's type in who am I. As soon as you would enter, we're now root. So let's do ls for list. At this point, what we can do is we have root access to the system. It's just like SSH or Telnet. We can do anything we want. With the Windows box, you can do pretty much the same things, except there's a little bit more graphic interface to it. List. So we have great access to the system. So in a nutshell, Armitage makes it pretty simple to actually exploit a system with relatively little knowledge about the actual back end of Metasploit. However, it does take a lot of research before you can actually choose what attacks to send to those vulnerable systems.
If you'd like to learn more about advanced information security, InfoSec Institute is a great resource at infosecinstitute.com.